It was a Thursday afternoon in late autumn when Daniel Hayes noticed little Emma Miller sitting alone on the school steps, her small shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Daniel was 28 years old, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that made children trust him. He taught third grade at Riverside Elementary, earning barely enough to cover his modest apartment and aging Honda. But he loved his work. He loved seeing young minds bloom, loved the way a child's face lit up when something finally made sense. Emma was 7 years old with honey blonde hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She wore a pink dress that had seen better days, and her shoes were scuffed at the toes. Daniel had noticed her in the hallway sometimes, always quiet, always polite. "Emma," Daniel said softly, sitting down beside her on the cool concrete steps. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" The little girl looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "My daddy forgot me again," she whispered. "He's always forgetting." Daniel's heart squeezed. He glanced at his watch. It was nearly 5 o'clock. The school parking lot was empty except for his car. "How long have you been waiting?" "Since 3, Emma said, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. Miss Peterson had to leave. She said someone would come. 2 hours. This little girl had been sitting here alone for 2 hours? "Do you have your daddy's phone number?" Daniel asked gently. Emma nodded and pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. Daniel took out his phone and dialed. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. He tried again. Same result. "Tell you what," Daniel said, keeping his voice cheerful. "Why don't we get you something warm to drink while we wait? There's a nice cafe just down the street. We can keep trying your daddy from there." Emma's face brightened just a little. "With hot chocolate?" "With extra marshmallows," Daniel promised. The cafe was warm and smelled of cinnamon and coffee. Daniel ordered hot chocolate for Emma and coffee for himself, spending money he'd been saving for new tires. They sat by the window where they could see the school entrance. "My daddy works a lot," Emma said quietly, holding her cup with both small hands. "He's always tired. Sometimes he forgets to eat dinner. Sometimes he cries when he thinks I'm sleeping." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. "It must be hard," he said softly. "Mommy died last year," Emma continued, her voice matter-of-fact in the way children speak of enormous things. "Daddy says she's in heaven now. He keeps her picture by his bed. Sometimes I hear him talking to it. I'm so sorry, Emma." "It's okay," she said, though her eyes said it wasn't. "Daddy tries really hard. He just forgets things sometimes." Daniel tried the number again and again. By 6:30, he was genuinely worried. "Emma, do you know where your daddy works?" She shook her head. "A big building downtown, with lots of windows. That described half the buildings in the city." Daniel made a decision. "How about this? You come home with me for dinner and we'll keep trying to reach your daddy. I'll leave a message at the school office with my number. Okay?" Emma nodded, relief washing over her small face. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes." Daniel's apartment was small but tidy. He made spaghetti, the one dish he could prepare reliably, while Emma sat at his tiny kitchen table, coloring with crayons he'd brought home from school. "This is nice," Emma said softly. "It feels safe here." Those words broke Daniel's heart and warmed it at the same time. They ate dinner together, and Daniel found himself telling her stories about when he was young. About his own mother who had worked 2 jobs to put him through college. About why he became a teacher. "I wanted to help kids," he said simply. "Kids like you who deserve someone to notice them. Someone to care." Emma smiled then, really smiled, for the first time that afternoon. At 8 o'clock, Daniel's phone finally rang. Robert Miller arrived at Daniel's apartment 20 minutes later, out of breath and clearly devastated. He was in his late 30s, wearing an expensive suit that hung wrong on him, as though he'd lost weight. His eyes were red-rimmed. "Emma!" He swept his daughter into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. "Oh God, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Daddy," Emma said, patting his back. "Mr. Hayes took good care of me." Robert looked at Daniel over his daughter's head, and Daniel saw a grief so profound it was almost physical. "I don't know how to thank you," Robert said, his voice breaking. "I had back-to-back meetings. I forgot about early dismissal. My assistant usually. But she's out this week and I just..." It's all right, Daniel said gently. These things happen. Emma's safe. That's what matters. No, Robert said firmly, setting Emma down but keeping hold of her hand. It's not all right. I'm her father. I'm supposed to protect her, to be there for her. Instead, I left her sitting on school steps for hours. His voice cracked. Her mother would be... He couldn't finish. Emma squeezed his hand. Mr. Miller, Daniel said quietly, grief is exhausting. Raising a child alone is exhausting. Sometimes we stumble. What matters is getting back up. And you're here now, Robert wiped his eyes. You fed her dinner? Spaghetti, Daniel said with a small smile. Nothing fancy. Still. Robert pulled out his wallet. Please, let me pay you back. Let me give you something for your time. No, Daniel said firmly but kindly. I didn't do this for money. I did it because Emma needed someone. That's all. Robert stared at him for a long moment. You have no idea who I am, do you? Daniel shook his head, confused. Robert Miller. Miller and Associates. I own the consulting firm downtown. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm a CEO. I manage hundreds of employees, handle million-dollar contracts. But I can't remember to pick up my daughter from school. Success at work doesn't make you a bad father, Daniel said quietly. It makes you human. What makes you a good father is being here right now, caring that you missed pickup, wanting to do better. Something shifted in the room then. Robert looked at this young teacher. This man who earned in a year what Robert spent on business lunches, who had opened his modest home without hesitation, who had seen his daughter's tears and simply acted. Would you... Robert started, then stopped. Would you consider tutoring Emma? After school, a few days a week? I'd pay you, of course. Well, whatever your rate is. Daniel hesitated. He had been planning to take on extra work anyway, maybe stocking shelves at night. But this felt different, more personal. I'd be happy to help Emma, he said carefully, but not for money. Maybe just check in more often, make sure she's getting picked up. I'll hire a nanny, Robert said immediately. Someone reliable. First thing tomorrow. But Daniel, may I call you Daniel? I'd really like Emma to spend time with you. She hasn't smiled like this since... He couldn't say it. Since her mother. Please, let me pay you fairly for your time. They negotiated, though Daniel felt uncomfortable the entire time. Finally, they agreed on a rate far higher than Daniel wanted, but far lower than Robert insisted on. Over the following months, something beautiful unfolded. Daniel came to the Miller home 3 afternoons a week. He helped Emma with homework, yes, but more importantly, he helped her laugh again. He helped her feel seen. And slowly, quietly, he helped Robert too. He listened when Robert needed to talk about his late wife, Sarah. He gently suggested that maybe Robert didn't need to work quite so many hours. That maybe being present was more important than being perfect. Sarah would have liked you, Robert said one evening after Emma had gone to bed. They were sitting in Robert's study, drinking coffee. She always said that kindness was the truest measure of a person. She sounds wonderful, Daniel said. She was. Robert smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't a sad smile. She would have been furious with me for forgetting Emma that day, but she also would have been grateful you were there. I'm glad I was, Daniel said simply. By the time spring arrived, Emma was thriving. She laughed more. She played more. She had stopped being quite so quiet, quite so invisible. And Robert had changed too. He left work at 5 now most days. He had family dinners. He went to Emma's school events. He was learning, slowly, how to be both father and mother, how to carry his grief without letting it crush him. You saved us, Robert said to Daniel one April afternoon. You know that, don't you? I just showed up, Daniel said, uncomfortable with praise. Exactly, Robert replied. You showed up. That's what mattered. Years later, when Emma graduated high school as valedictorian, she would give a speech about the people who shaped her life. She would talk about her mother's love, her father's strength, and her teacher's kindness. Mr. Hayes taught me that family isn't just about blood, she would say, her voice clear and strong. It's about who shows up, who stays, who cares. In the audience, Daniel would cry. Robert, sitting beside him, would put a hand on his shoulder. They had become family, the 3 of them. bound not by obligation, but by choice, by kindness, by showing up on a Thursday afternoon when a little girl needed someone to notice her tears. That was the gift. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, just simple, steady presence, just seeing someone and deciding they mattered, just showing up.